Hello, my name is Victor. I'm a student at CSUMB. With me are Chris, Miah, and Genesis, students in our social movements class. Today we'll be discussing digital privacy, data collection, and surveillance.
Hello.
Hi. Yo.
So, before we really start, I want to ask you guys if you consider yourselves private people.
Man.
Yes.
Yeah, I feel like a very private person.
And if I told you that your privacy was being violated every day without you knowing about it, how would you feel about that?
Well, for me, that's really gross to think about and kind of embarrassing. I do not need people knowing what I'm looking up online.
What are you looking up online?
You can waterboard that out of me.
Let's not test that.
Unfortunately, your browser history is also something people have access to. They also know what you're ordering online, what you're saying to people, where you're going, everything you do on your phone, computer, tablet, smartwatch, all of it's being monitored. Your data is being constantly collected and then bought.
That seems dangerous.
It is. They're called cookies.
That's what cookies are? That doesn't seem like a very appropriate name.
Not at all. And most of the time, it's crazily unethical. Though, guess that never really stopped a stalker. So these data collectors, the tools that they're using, they're the little invisible man watching your every move. You're hardly ever going to know he's there. And he's going to know everything about you.
Well, going forward, we're going to be discussing digital privacy and some strategies to keep anyone from looking too closely at Genesis browser history. We will also be including audio from an interview conducted with Michelle Frances Turner Anderson, a learning strategist for Adobe and an independent creator with her own company, Michelle Francine Productions. Miah, you conducted this interview. Can you tell us a little bit about your interview with Michelle?
Sure, Victor. Michelle is actually an alumni from our school and gained experience in her field working the help desk right here at the library. We talked primarily about her time spent in IT and how that related to digital privacy. She also has experience working at the Naval Postgraduate School for about 8 years here in Monterey. I asked questions that mainly concern her opinions on digital privacy, data collection, and digital security. She had a lot of really interesting things to say.
Well, considering her employment history, with Adobe and the Naval Postgraduate School, I think it's also important that we include the perspective of the Electronic Freedom Foundation, also known as the EFF.
And can you give us a bit of a background on the EFF?
Sure. The EFF is a non-profit based in San Francisco, primarily dedicated to protecting digital rights and online civil liberties. They're one of the reasons that online speech is protected at all. They get in a lot of legal battles with the government when it comes to digital security and our freedoms of speech and privacy.
Okay, so why are we including them?
Well, they came up a lot in my research on digital privacy rights and are very critical of the attitudes that the government and Adobe have towards digital privacy. And not just the government and Adobe, but almost every company out there. Google, Meta, Twitter, even your phones, Android and Apple, every company out there.
Wait, really? In what ways?
Well, for instance, according to the ACLU, or the American Civil Liberties Union, Adobe is actually one of the worst offenders when it comes to data collection. They're also notoriously unreliable when it comes to security of their consumers' data.
So we should start by really defining internet privacy.
Digital privacy is taking account of what it is that we post online in a social sense in social media. It is taking an account of what we fill out in various forms. It is the process of accepting terms and conditions of applications that we download on our computers and phones. It's very broad to me, but it is taking into account what it is I'm agreeing to, downloading, and sharing out into the world or up into the cloud.
I think Michelle puts it pretty aptly. I also think we should be talking about the ways that digital privacy is negotiated by the entities that buy that information.
Negotiated? I think you mean violated.
Violated? How so?
I mean, first thing you have to know is that the majority of people don't even understand what's really going on when it comes to data collection and digital privacy. I mean, some of them don't even know enough to feel uncomfortable with the fact that they're having their data collected.
Yeah, that's definitely true.
I mean, imagine being tracked and surveyed all the time. That's the whole concept of the panopticon. A concept in which you never know when you're being watched. And so that creates a chilling effect on your behavior. Especially with our changing political situation right now, anybody who is traditionally marginalized, or the people who are in vulnerable populations, and even anybody that sympathizes with them, all of them are in danger. Even people that don't currently sympathize with them, but have the potential of sympathizing with them, or having connection to someone that does sympathize with them, they're also in danger. Everything that someone might use to hurt you, it's right there, sitting in a computer belonging to an unethical company, or potentially the oppressive government, or even just some random guy who has ill intentions. Remember, these data brokers, they don't care who they sell your data to. They'll sell to anybody.
I think I get what you mean. Like, I wouldn't want the government to look too hard at my sexuality or my gender identity or even my citizenship status. I feel like that'd be really dangerous.
Yeah, it really does put things into perspective.
I agree. There's also definitely things we can do about it. For one thing, education is a very important way to spread word about what's happening. A lot of people just don't know these things, or they don't want to know them. It's one of the reasons we're doing this podcast in the first place.
Michelle agrees with you on the topic of education. She actually had a lot to say about how much people know.
In your experience, how is the state of education on digital privacy? And would you say people are more ignorant or knowledgeable?
Ooh, I would say people are probably more ignorant for sure. And I'm wondering now because when I was going to college, I don't recall having any conversations with my professors about digital privacy, how to protect yourself, what to look for. I'll tell you when I got educated on that. I got educated on that when I became an IT specialist at the Naval Postgraduate School, needing to carry a security clearance. We quarterly got education on privacy often, and a lot of that stuff is still very much drilled into my head. So I really, really think that digital privacy education should frankly probably start in grade school.
Right. Nothing ever not fixed by education.
We should start talking about who exactly we need to protect our privacy from, and then discuss the motives of these institutions.
Well, isn't the motive obvious?
How so?
This is America. It's always the money or the power.
In our modern age, there has been an increasing use of digital worlds for all aspects of our lives. In fact, public and private organizations both depend upon technology to collect our data for their own operations.
In other words, surveillance.
That's a very heavy word to use.
Heavy? Maybe, but it's definitely accurate.
Chris isn't wrong, but before we get into that, we should probably give some context.
In general, it is sneakier or stealthier than many realize. Data collection can come in the form of, as we've mentioned, you wanting to utilize that cool new app on your mobile phone. In the terms and conditions that you're accepting, the privacy policy you're accepting, anytime you're entering an email address, I would say be prepared for things like getting random emails from other institutions, online stores, scam artists, what have you, because those applications, if you're not careful and not paying attention, are likely selling your first name, last name, and email address to third parties who are looking to sell information. Also, what happens with the collection of basic information like first name, last name, and email address, that information in the terms and conditions or in the policy, what organizations might be doing is actually selling that information along with what your interests are out in the digital world. There's profiles on all of us. Anyone who's ever opened up a social media account or downloaded an app, there is a cloud, a nebulous of you out there that is slowly being formed the more you invite apps, digital social medias, the more forms you fill out, the more that you frankly speak in front of your phone for those apps that you've given permission to have voice commands. All of those things are collecting a blueprint of you, creating a profile of you to just create a digital version that companies can, again, either sell to, can advertise to, can market to, or more heinously take advantage of to steal your identity for any financial or profitable gain.
Right, that kind of ties back to all the stuff we were talking about earlier. It's kind of creepy to have all my information processed. That's why I like ad blockers and stuff. Go Firefox.
That's the main reason.
Hypothetically, and in totally not a violation of YouTube's terms of service, I also want to watch videos without the different ads playing.
So what Michelle was describing earlier was definitely data collection done on behalf of private institutions, right?
Well, that and internet scam artists, yes.
It's strange when you think about it, when you consider the existence of entire companies dedicated to buying and selling our information. It feels kind of cannibalizing, turning the consumer into the consumed.
Oh, like data brokers.
Yeah, exactly. Come to think of it, Miah, you asked Michelle about data brokers too, right?
I did.
I think that there are good ones out there and not so great ones out there. Are they legitimate businesses? Well, I mean, if they're making money off of the collection and selling of data, and again, they are doing it legally and ethically, no issues there. No issues there. But I think that I would hope that these brokers would be mindful of whom they are partnering with or whom they are selling that data to, looking at the intentions of the organization or company that's receiving that information. I'm sure a lot of them are just really just money driven and that's all they care about. They don't care who they're giving their information to or what the intended purposes of the organizations on the other end. But those who do care, like, yeah, let's do it legally, ethically, and hopefully it is sharing data to organizations or clients for them that are doing something that's humanitarianly sound.
She took a sort of middle stance. She's right that there are data brokers that act without ethics in mind. I mean, a lot of them really just sell that sort of information to anybody. Like, sure, they have official clients like the government and other corporations, but random people can just buy that information.
That's really unsettling, to be honest. All of it. I don't think I'm very comfortable with anyone having that sort of information about me. Even the government is pretty bad. I can't help but imagine the worst case scenario no matter who's buying.
So, I mean, circling back to your hesitance on using the word surveillance,
It sure sounds like surveillance put like that. What's the official definition anyway?
you can define it as the monitoring of behavior, activities, and information. That definitely means that data collection fits right in.
I guess you're right. To be honest though, when I think surveillance, I'm usually thinking of Nixon and Watergate. It's a very government thing to do.
I know that in recent years there's been a lot of scandals involving the American government violating the privacy of their citizens. Snowden and the whole thing with PRISM definitely comes to mind.
Well, I asked her about some of the things that we researched, and, well, she was kind of hesitant to answer. Here's what I asked and what she had to say.
How do you feel about the government using private data in operations, to mention cell phone tracking, surveillance drones, or electronic surveillance laws?
At the end of the day, it just depends on the purpose and the use of that data. If it is truly for the purposes of protecting American citizens, I'm all for that. Absolutely. If for whatever reason it turns into a device to control the masses, manipulate the masses, then that is very uncomfortable for me.
I mean, everyone's entitled to an opinion. Mine just is probably a little different from hers.
Well, you did research on the public institutions doing the data collection, right? What did you find?
And for the completely hypothetical person who doesn't know what you're talking about, what exactly are dragnets?
Well, first you have to know about the Patriot Act, which Miah was asking Michelle about earlier. It's an act that was passed by Congress that was signed by former Presidents Bush in the early 2000s. It basically gave permission for a huge increase on surveillance.
If we're thinking about what else happened in the early 2000s, I think I can guess why.
Yeah. Anyway, the surveillance dragnets were a part of the act. They track everything you do online or connect to devices on the off chance you might encounter a terrorist. Or they did. Now they keep an eye on you interacting with terrorists and people like protesters. In fact, you don't even have to interact with them, just being near them or connected to somebody who was near them, walking through the wrong area at the wrong time, being caught on camera at the wrong time of the day, anything.
So the dragnet surveillance, it's keeping a track of all our communication records, text, emails, everything?
Yes.
Well, that doesn't seem very legal.
I mean, regardless of how you and me might perceive it, it's still interpreted as constitutional according to the Supreme Court, as we saw in 2010 on the case Holder versus Humanitarian Law Project.
So, if people are uncomfortable with this type of surveillance, or they're wanting to be safer on the internet, what should they do?
Ad blockers. Duh.
Of course, that's your first thought.
I'm very passionate about them. Also Firefox. Go Firefox.
Well, there's a little more to strategies for digital safety than that. There's small things that anyone, no matter how familiar or comfortable they are with electronics, can do. All it takes is a little effort and a little care.
And a little bit of operational security, or OPSEC, will keep you safer than before.
Miah, did Michelle have anything to say about personal security?
Oh, definitely.
For personal operational security, I tend to keep encrypted folders, say, on my computer where I put really sensitive, personally identifiable information, whether it's like tax returns that might have my social security on it, maybe, a list of passwords, just anything that's really, really sensitive that I would never want leaked out onto the internet. I personally utilize encryption software, for example, Keka, Keka. I utilize that to encrypt a lot of my files on my storage. Also, it looks like for me, utilizing a password manager for my browser so that if I'm tired of constantly putting in my username and password, I do have a safe application that will identify, okay, Michelle's on this website. This is a username and password that's typically assigned to that website to get me in quickly. And also, too, if I'm out and about, whether I'm on my cell phone or on my laptop, I am conscientious of who might be looking over my shoulder. I'm also conscientious of the Wi-Fi networks I'm connecting to as well, because people can sit in cafes or libraries and utilize Wi-Fi sniffers, for a lack of a better term. These sniffers are used to listen to and watch what people are transmitting to collect their personal information or their keystrokes even. So I make sure that in public settings, I'm connecting to a trusted Wi-Fi, meaning the establishment I'm at, I'm on their Wi-Fi network that should be protected and safe. Or even if I'm unsure and I'm doing, say, work for my employer, I always make sure I'm connected to the VPN in that case to do my work and send and transfer documents that way. So it's a multi-step process for me, but it's all about encryption and keeping my personal documents safe and secure and looking over my shoulder and connecting to private networks when I have access to one.
That seems kind of complicated.
Well, it can be. It definitely can be. But there's things that people can do, even you.
Yes, definitely. It sounds like there are ways to maybe mitigate the potential dangers. Being hesitant to post too much public information on social media, switching to a browser like Firefox, using ad blockers, all that is free.
And in addition to that, there's also VPNs, like Michelle uses, which are virtual private networks. They basically encrypt your information. They block people from seeing what your IP address is or your unique identifying address. And it makes it look like someone else is doing the browsing, not you. Also, because it's encrypted, nobody can see what you're looking at or what you're typing. Aside from that, there are also hardened browsers, such as Ironfox or LibreWolf. These are browsers that have been modified to have the maximum safety, security, and privacy settings enabled by default. Some of these hardened browsers, especially LibreWolf, also include additional privacy settings, such as canvas spoofing, which help to prevent certain new forms of tracking. There's also alternative social media apps and communication sites that you can use. For instance, instead of using WhatsApp or Facebook Messenger, or even text messages to talk with your friends and family, you can try using Signal. Signal is an end-to-end, quantum-safe, encrypted messaging platform. Now, I know what we all think about the recent scandals involving Signal, but as long as you are using Signal and you verify that everybody in that chat is who they say that they are, Signal is still one of the best ways for vulnerable populations to talk to each other and be absolutely certain that their conversations are not being surveyed. Additionally, instead of using something like, say, Discord to talk with people, you can use an end-to-end encrypted messaging platform called Matrix. Matrix allows for end-to-end encrypted group chats, as well as the creation of spaces with multiple rooms in them. All of the individual-to-individual two-person chats are by default end-to-end encrypted.
Using these resources while also implementing a little bit of care into your digital life, all of that means that you and the people connected to you are a little bit safer. I think it's important just to keep the people around you safe.
And maybe you want YouTube to stop killing the mood.
Yeah, maybe that too.
And lastly, how do you feel about people who don't care about their digital privacy?
I think that they are potentially in for a rude awakening.